Welcome. Thank you for joining us today on this esteemed panel here. We're going to be talking about home textiles and interior design, advancing sustainability. I'm Helen Gordon, a regenerative designer and practitioner, and co-founder from Nested Living, an interior design and studio and workshop and consultancy that creates environments with soul. And I'm also here representing Interior Design Declares today, which is a declaration made up of interior design studios and suppliers, and is part of the wider built environment declares. And we've all set up to address the wider climate and biodiversity emergency by striving to work towards a series of guiding principles. So here today, my panel is made up of Delyth, Carole, Simone, and Julian. And first of all, I'd just like to get each one of you to just give a little intro about yourself. So if we could start with Delyth.
Hello, can you all hear okay? Excellent. My name's Delyth Fetherston Dilke, and I'm an upholsterer. I used to be a lawyer, and I work just with natural fibres for the fillings. I avoid foam because of the chemical content, and I've campaigned to move our country's law to move away from the chemical content.
Carole?
Hi and welcome. So I'm Carole Collet. I'm a professor in design at Central St Martin's, University of the Arts in London. And my focus is on prototyping new ideas to design, biodesign, circular design, regenerative design. And here I represent Maison Zero. I'm the director of Maison Zero, which is the partnership between Central St Martin's and LVMH, where we're looking to prototype through creativity new ways of making products for the future that have a better ecological impact or a positive ecological impact.
Simone?
Hi, my name's Simone Suss. I run an interior design company called Studio Suss. I advocate passionately for a more sustainable interior design industry. I'm on the board on the sustainability committee for the British Institute of Interior Design. I'm a co-founder of Interior Design Declares, and I represent Interior Design Declares and the Built Environment Declares steering group. I also represent the British Institute of Interior Design on the Construction Industry Council Climate Change Committee, and I'm always looking to find the most sustainable interiors that we can create.
Thank you. And Julian?
Amazing. Wow, what a CV. Hi, everyone. My name's Julian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ponda. We're a biomaterials company based here in the UK. And we're on a mission to make textiles which come from inherently planet-healing supply chains. And that's, for us, that starts with BioPuff, a series of plant-based insulations and padding materials, which can be used for fashion, but also interiors, upholstery. But what makes them really special is we make them out of plants grown on regenerated wetlands, which enables us to have huge carbon benefits, huge biodiversity benefits, and many other sort of ecosystem uplift from our supply chain.
Thank you. Yeah, as we sort of mentioned, we're trying to sort of raise more awareness really about home textiles and the interiors market. 45% of total UK carbon emissions come from the built construction. 22 million pieces of furniture are discarded each year in the UK, the majority sent directly to landfill. 4.75 million mattresses every year, equivalent to the twice to fill Wembley Stadium, are also probably sent to landfill. So as a trained textile designer as well, I understand too well the amount of waste and pollution in the industry. The textile industry is the second largest polluter of fresh water worldwide. Up to 3,500 chemical substances are used to turn raw materials into textiles, and 10% are hazardous to human health or the environment. Some may persist in the environment and build upon our body and affect our immune and our reproductive systems. So there is some sort of kind of retraction about chemicals, but there's a long way to go really. And I just wanted to start my conversation by talking with Delyth here about what have you found when you've been going about your work in terms of legislation, because we realise that there are challenges of onboarding new materials into the space in general in interiors. If you could talk a bit more about your campaign and where, what your insights are on this.
So our furniture in the UK is almost 100% of it made from foam, which is petrochemical based. Now, because it's highly flammable, it's treated with flame retardant chemicals. And I think if I asked most of you to guess what percentage of your sofa was chemical, what percentage was just flame retardant chemicals, and someone can put up a hand if they want to have a guess. Well, I'll tell you, it's about 18%. It'll be in the 10 to 20% range of that whole mass of the sofa is made of flame retardant chemicals. And we're the only country that does this. If you go to Europe, they can take apart a sofa, take the foam out of it, and they can recycle it. Dow has got a plant in the south of France where they're recycling the foam. We cannot do that in the UK. At the end of life of a sofa, it has to be incinerated. It is the only option. It can no longer go to landfill because DEFRA have realized the toxicity, the bioaccumulation, the persistence of the flame retardant chemicals. And DEFRA have insisted on a new law which says our sofas have to be incinerated. Meanwhile, the Department for Business and Trade are insisting that the chemicals continue. There is a total blockage, and we in the UK are completely alone in this. And these chemicals are releasing into the home, they're releasing into our environments, they permeate our skin, and they're bad for our health, bad for the environmental health, and they completely make every wonderful thing that's being done in this room in home textiles utterly pointless, because none of those home textiles can be recycled at the end of their use because they have to be incinerated because they are contaminated with the chemicals that have been put into the interior foam. And somehow we need to get that message out there, but it's my turn to stop talking.
So Julian, also, 'cause I know you're doing a bit in the home as well as the fashion, aren't you? And what different fibres could we use in textile products that maybe are less harmful? Could you tell me a bit about BioPuff, for example?
Absolutely. So we believe that we need to have completely new ways of thinking of where we source our materials from when it comes to looking at alternative fibres. The same conventional way of thinking of these incumbents has led us into the problem that we're in today. And so that's why when we started our company 4 years ago, we started looking in completely new spaces. We were looking at plants. What are some of the most resilient plants that we can look at, which are going to bring ecosystem benefits to our environments that we need them to, whilst also being able to provide the performance necessary that we need to replace some of the incumbents that we have today. And that led us to looking in wetland spaces, which offer huge environmental benefits. Wetlands are our best terrestrial store of carbon dioxide on the planet. Huge biodiversity hubs as well. And we came across these plants called cattails, Typha latifolia is their Latin name, bulrushes, you might know them as. And we're able to extract the seed fibers from them, and they actually make incredible insulation and padding materials as well. Through a series of technologies we've developed to extract and process these fibers, we're then able to make materials which even Delyth has used in an amazing showcase upstairs in Home Textiles as well, into a series of stools as well. We also make materials for fashion. We have an amazing showcase with Parley as well, with the jacket, which has just been developed with Dover Street Market. But these are the starting points, as well as the huge number of innovations here, which have the potential to really disrupt some of these damaging materials which we're using at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you, Julian. And Carole, what have you found while investigating tableware materials when developing your prototypes?
Well, we are a design research focused entity. So for us, any challenge is actually an opportunity. And what we want to do is use design research as a driving force and a catalyst for change to really move into that circular regenerative economy. But the key challenge we find is that we've progressed to some extent. We now find companies that sell materials made from waste, recovered from waste. So we worked with people like Nona Source for Dead Fabric, Fallen and Felt. They recover fallen trees from London. Bet's a company that recovers silver from medical x-rays. So we can find some materials, but for other waste materials, the value chain, the supply chain is not in place. So, with our glassware designer, for instance, Lulu Harrison had to go around winemakers with a bucket, literally, to recover some of the sediments, to experiment with that materials and explore how we could upcycle this and bring it into a glass recipe, for instance. So the challenge is that the supply chain in terms of waste stream is fragmented, not fully in place. To some extent, we quite like that because we're very good at saying, oh, nobody's thought of this, we could do something with this. But then what matters is then who is going to now put that supply chain in place. And then the second key challenge is when you do this small prototyping scale, you need to work with the relevant equipment and workshops. And it was difficult, for instance, to find a glass furnace that would agree to experiment with that new recipe. And that recipe lowers the temperature by 400 degrees, so it's a massive gain in terms of energy. But finding somewhere that wants to take the risk. So we need more risk takers, and we need more people, entrepreneurs, that really understand the value of waste and really put in place an efficient, reliable system for us to source from.
Brilliant. Yeah, very insightful. Simone, also, what does it mean in terms of being a sustainable interior design practice, and what compromises probably have to be made on a daily basis?
Yes, thank you. Great question. What does it mean to be a sustainable interior design practice? It means every single decision that we're making, there needs to be a sustainable alternative. So from the start of a project, rather than just going in and ripping everything out and sending it all to the skips and sending it to landfill, it's how can we reuse things? How can we reupholster products with the right materials? So what is it that can be used? What's the materiality that we can reuse first and foremost? And then if we are going to be specifying new, how can we channel our clients' money to be really raising the bar on new and innovative solutions that are kind of groundbreaking and regenerative and working together. So it means that every single decision from the paints that we're specifying, the materials that we're specifying, then if we're making furniture, how we're having that furniture made, can we shorten the supply chains? Can we try and have it all made in the UK? Can we use waste products like Fallen and Feld, who I think are doing a great job in terms of the wood that literally is just a waste product from London, but it means that it's not only sequestered carbon locally, but also it doesn't need to be moving around. We don't need to be shipping things in from all over the world. We've got a really great interiors system in the UK in terms of amazing designers and creators of craft, and so we should be really working with them. And so it just means that every single decision we are trying to look at the best way of moving our clients and our projects forward on that.
Thank you, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you just touched on it here in terms of scale, and when we're sort of shifting to different manufacturing sort of solutions from this linear take, make, waste to the circular economy, it's quite challenging in terms of sort of labs starting out almost trying to sort of, change what we're doing here, and how can we go in terms of scale really to completely change and put on its head what we've had out there. So Carole, just wanted to talk first of all, because you've mentioned about the circular sourcing strategies you're trying to develop. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the challenge is to find the relevant waste and to focus on not downcycling this waste, so lowering the quality. First of all, whether it's recycling or at least upcycling. So how can we actually add value and with the waste? And so that's a really key focus that we need to think of, not just looking at waste. And the other thing, you've just brought it up, is really have that local, regional sourcing strategy. That's integral to the circularity. Because if you take a waste that comes all the way from Bangladesh all the way here, then that defeats the purpose. So these circular regional networks, again, are not really in place. So for us, we're design research. That's our job. We research, we spend time, we have the time to look for these opportunities. But when you're in a design or an industry, they often don't have the time to spend months looking for where would be that waste, how we do it, how we do process it. So we need, I think, more support for entrepreneurs like you, Julian, who start in brilliant initiatives in setting up new material propositions, but they need more support, business rates, tax incentives. So we need an economy that is driving entrepreneurs to invest in this sector, so that then it's available. Then it's not even an issue. Any designer can source it easily without, the extra work. So I think we need to really think about how we can put that infrastructure in place so that circularity is not just an objective or trajectory, but it becomes real and concrete, because we are still not circular. We talk about it, but the majority of our economy is a linear economy. And there's the will to shift, but the infrastructure is too fragmented still.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That is the challenge. And just bringing you in there, Julian, you sort of just starting to go up in volume slightly from the lab. Could you talk a bit more about your experiences there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of innovators in this space have a sort of multifaceted challenge when it comes to scaling, because there's often expectations of scale in order to make significant impact in perhaps big manufacturer or brands' use of new novel materials, perhaps an expectation of scale if they want to meet their goals. There's an expectation on startups, or startups expect to be able to get funding in order to be able to invest in the scaling infrastructure which they need in order to be able to scale as well. But then that often needs the commitments from brands to be able to show to the investors as well, or to the manufacturers to show to the investors, look, downscale, down the line, people want this material, and we need to be able to invest in order to be able to scale it up. And you do sometimes end up in a bit of a catch-22 where you're both waiting for the other one to be able to take the first step forward. I think one of the key stakeholders within this space, which is in my experience is sometimes missed, is the actual large-scale textile manufacturers at the moment. Everyone in this room will need at some point to be able to utilize existing infrastructure in order to be able to scale their innovations. Unless every single innovator in this room is going to raise hundreds of millions to build huge factories, new factories with bespoke machinery, we're going to have to use existing manufacturers. And therefore, they need to be within the conversations, in my opinion, earlier in order to be able to have better sort of unions of minds looking to shift the needle together, as opposed to sort of independence speaking from two different directions. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that leads me nicely, because I know you've been starting to work with some larger manufacturers, Delyth, some work with IKEA. If you wanted to talk a little bit more about that and how...
So I don't believe that the government, the UK government, is just going to follow what they were told to do by the Environmental Audit Committee. So the Environmental Audit Committee decided in 2019 in a review called Toxic Chemicals in Everyday Life that we should move to the American or European model where we don't treat our foam with flame retardant chemicals. And the government is just skating over that. And I believe that the movement to say our furniture is not in a circular economy, it can never be in a circular economy whilst we treat it with chemicals, has got to come ground up. It has got to be journalists writing articles. It has got to be social media. It has got to be trade associations joining together and getting talks. It has got to be spreading the word. And I have been working with a lot of the large manufacturers to try to bring them together with the scientists so that there can be a better understanding and a better viewpoint as to what is the most fire-safe and most health and environmental safe way of moving forward. And amongst industry, there is a real appetite for change, but they don't know how to talk about this to their consumers. And we as consumers and we as buyers and designers need to do the talking, need to ask the questions. What is in that? What is its composition? How does that affect me? Have we got a trade association meeting coming up? Could we talk about this issue? And if anybody wants to, thank you so much, Julian, for mentioning it. If anybody wants to come upstairs and see the wonderful panels put on by Future Fabrics Expo, which talk about the flame retardants and learn a bit more, I would love to see you, to talk to you, and to help spread this word.
Thank you. And Simone, I mean, obviously there's challenges again when you're a designer in this space and sort of working with small bespoke suppliers to large ones, and also in terms of the client and how to sort of educate them, and if they specifically want something that maybe is not so sustainable. I mean, how do you sort of work with this?
It's tricky because we are there to work with our clients to create interiors of their dreams. Often it's a home or it's an office, it's somewhere where they're spending a lot of time, and so we're there to create the vision for them. I haven't met any clients yet who actively don't want to be sustainable, so that's a good thing. I have to admit, they're not driving the conversation as much as I wish that they were. They don't. It's a bit like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess so if I have to, but the law isn't changing quickly enough, and that means that they're not regulated to do it, and therefore that means that if the sustainable option is more expensive, then it becomes a budgetary issue, and so that is frustrating. But as designers, all we can do is channel our clients' funds to people doing the right thing. So there's always a conversation, whatever buying decision we're making. At Studio Sus, we'll always be showing them the sustainable things. We're never going to proactively do anything that we know is toxic. Sometimes our clients will say, well, actually, I just want to buy this thing, this fast interiors thing. And it's like, okay, well, go do that yourself. I'm not getting involved. So it's about working with our clients and educating them. And then through educating them, then hoping that they will make the right decisions. Essentially, if it's their budget, they're in charge of it. And we hope to be able to showcase better interiors, better products, things that are shifting the dial on really sustainable, regenerative, circular design for interiors, because it's coming. It is coming, and sometimes I feel like I'm in a little bubble where I see the change, and it's like, when is it actually going to become mass market? So it's about working together and collaborating across the industry to try and make that sea change happen together. Because there's no reason, for example, why we need to have such toxic chemicals in our furniture. There are alternatives out there, but unfortunately at the moment, the insurance companies won't insure something unless it's fire retardant. So it means that actually as an industry, we really are a bit screwed because it's got to have this fire retardancy in it. Otherwise, I can't put it in a client's house, and I certainly can't put it in a commercial setting. So it's about working out ways and strategies together of how we can make sure that everyone is meeting all of the requirements in terms of meeting the match tests and meeting the fire retardancy rules, but without using the chemicals. And yes, it's great to use more natural materials, but then where are they coming from? Are they coming from regenerative sources? All of that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a minefield, but it's at the moment, I think for designers, it's really just about trying to work on one solution at a time and showcase that solution, and then hopefully the rest of the industry will collaborate and pick it up and go with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We sort of touched on this sort of press angle, and also in terms of fashion to interiors, and how it feels like there's been so much coverage of fashion, but interiors is absolutely lagging behind. I mean, Carole, I know, if you had a bit of sort of insight on this at all.
Yeah, no, this is interesting because we've done a lot of research on circular regenerative fashion projects, and this year we're presenting our first tableware. We looked really at interiors, so we did a whole survey. We looked at what's going on, and I hadn't quite realized how somehow there's a real focus on fashion. There's a blame on fashion. A lot of companies are really on it, trying to improve, and we need to design better and help them. But somehow it feels the whole interior, so the tableware, for instance, is just not in the conversation, as if it was not an issue. And so somehow there's a lot of malpractice in industry which has gone under the radar because it's not highlighted. So I think every single industry needs to change. So fashion needs to change, our food system needs to change, or every product design needs to change. But we need to make sure that the press doesn't just point the finger at just one industry, because the others, as a result, escape that scrutiny. So I think we need to be really mindful that when we communicate, and in fashion I see a lot of really interesting depths of research, investigative journalism that really push that conversation on sustainability in fashion. We didn't have that even 10 years ago. I'm not seeing that in interior space in the same way. And I have spoken to quite a few journalists, I won't name, but brilliant. They know their stuff. They really know about sustainability. And they tell me, my editor will not want that story because they say our readers are not interested. So I think we need to really do some work on how do we create compelling stories, or tell the stories of sustainability by stealth. That's another way to do it. But we need to make sure that people value what we're all doing, because if nobody values the effort, the work that goes into this, and so we need the press to also help communicate that planet healing objective that we have. Because if it's not clear, and why is it that the reader is not interested? So I think we need to really kind of work more on the communication of why this is better for each and single one of us.
Thank you. I mean, is there a sort of cultural shift that needs to happen? This sort of consumption that happens, this total, not understanding maybe where things come from originally, and just, does it all need to change? I don't know, Simone, you can sort of talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need this change in the cultural shift, and as in a change in the cultural shift. Fashion is very much on the agenda with this, and interiors just aren't, and I don't understand it. The campaign about the fire retardants it was covered in the Eye newspaper last year. Then it was front page of what was it? Front
Daily
page
Star.
Of the Daily Star. And then I thought, wow,
And then the
this
Daily
is
Mirror.
okay. Then it's like, okay, this is getting momentum on the nationals, and then it just tumbleweed, silence. And I don't understand if it's some sort of campaigning or lobbying at the top, or I don't understand if it's because the interiors market is part of the construction industry. There's obviously some very powerful people at the top lobbying and getting their agendas. I don't understand why people aren't more up in arms about it. If our interiors are so toxic, why are people not caring more and shouting about it more? So I definitely do think it would be great for there to be some sort of call to action, call to arms change, that if we could all work together.
Julian, I mean, what do you think in terms of how can we shift things culturally?
I think legislation definitely does play an important role within this. I think what is quite a unique opportunity for a lot of innovators in this room, for example, is being able to have a much more transparent understanding of where the materials are coming from to begin with. A lot of incumbent big supply chains, there's just so much opaqueness throughout the supply chain. It's so hard to tell where your materials are even coming from. If you can't tell where they're coming from, you don't know what their impact is. And so I think just on a base level, what this sort of community and movement is able to achieve, it's just a much more holistic approach to understanding, as you were saying, if we are choosing plant-based, well, is it actually better as well? Are there spaces where synthetic materials should still be used? And if they're not being used, are we making the holistically more regenerative decision? And I think being able to have that transparency enables us to communicate better to consumers what decisions they're making as well at the moment. I think there's just way too much confusion and complexity. And that's because it's a very complex challenge, shifting these industries. But I think hopefully with more of that transparency will enable us to have simpler communication, simpler choices for consumers, designers to be able to pick between the materials that are better for the planet.
Thank you. I mean, Carole, I know that you've been talking about almost this sort of trend, with your glassware that you've been experimenting with and using. Okay, transparent is the trend, but what if the way that you do your glass, it isn't going to be transparent coloured? I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that and how we can perhaps change attitudes.
Sometimes it's a sort of unspoken codes. For instance, if you look at luxury tableware, if you go to Michelin star restaurants, you will have very, very transparent glasses. So you can see the color of your wine, and that the more transparent, the more kind of chemical input you need in a glass to make it. So But what if we were revisiting what was luxury a few hundred years ago? And if you look at Venetian glass, which was very colorful, very luxurious, it was again a cultural attitude. So sometimes that cultural attitude stops us from innovating. It's the same with glass packaging for perfume. You know, the darker the glass, the better in terms of sustainability, because you can put more recycled glass content. But there's an obsession with transparent perfume bottles. So, you know, sometimes the designers need to take the risk as well to make a brave, bold shift in the way you think about what does that mean. So breaking the codes is also our jobs as designers, and to sort of challenge the established understanding of wine has to be drunk in a clear glass. I think it's also up to us to provide and design really desirable new propositions that make them really part of the sort of a new landscape.
Yeah, I really like that, breaking the code. That's great. Delyth, what about you breaking the code?
The law has to change. Just the law has to change. I was at a meeting at Furniture Makers Hall last week with some of the major furniture manufacturers, from Next to Silent Night. They have so many ideas. They have so many ideas as to how to design more sustainable furniture, and they can't do it. They can't do it because there is this 25, 30-year-old law that's been constantly under review, and every government backs down from making a decision because they go, oh, it's to do with fire, I don't want to be the one to make a decision. We've got to make a decision, we've got to be bold, and if we can't follow America, follow Europe. If we can't follow Europe, make our own logical decision. But clinging on to an old law that doesn't work, that doesn't benefit people, and that creates toxic smoke when it burns is not the way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from that, again, how can we be more ambitious and shift towards materials that really do have a positive impact? Julian, I'd like to hear a bit more about your regenerative work in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think, Carole, you hit the nail on the head with, I think, there is influence within the market. We are influenced by trends. We are influenced by things, by people who tell us things are high quality or cooler, or like in vogue at the moment. And I think there is absolutely an opportunity to choose different types of materials, and maybe they have a slightly different feel or a slightly different performance to what we're used to at the moment. But we can redefine what it means to have a quality luxury material that is a more sustainable option as well. And I absolutely, completely agree that being able to shift to more regenerative practices and to be able to push more impact, ultimately, you need to start with having more pull on the other end and being able to have designers lead the way. And, you know, this is fashion, not materials, but also with the stool that Delyth has designed. But within fashion, we've just done this piece with Parley and Dover Street Market, and they've done an amazing job of using our material Biopath in a way that can really speak to consumers, and you can really see how that redefining of what it means to own an insulated jacket could really push the way on shifting the needle to a much larger sort of like industrial movement as well.
Thank you.
We should be talking to insurance companies as well, speaking to the British interior designers, just campaigning, you know, and putting it on people's agenda, because I think people aren't aware of the issues. They aren't aware that we're being bootstrapped by this ancient law that is really affecting how we can create a more sustainable interior design industry. And so I think by talking about, you know, on panels like here, being able to speak about it and actually come up with some solutions and trying to work with other designers on what those solutions could be. You know, maybe it's less upholstered things. Let's look at that for the moment. But, you know, everyone needs some upholstery, so we all need the fabrics as well. So how can we work with those? Is there an alternative to a fire-rated interliner? I'm not sure. Is that something that needs to be looked at here? Very possibly. But if there is a way that we can kind of test and still have the things that are needed for interior design products, which is, it needs to be robust. So it's different to fashion in that way. It needs to be robust. People are going to be sitting on it all day or whatever. So the robustness of the fabrics, and then how can we get through these fire regulations? I think those are the really important things.
And Delyth, yeah, just final comments as we're starting to run out of time, I think. But yeah, how can we be more ambitious?
Just talk. Just talk to each other. Talk on social media. Talk to anyone who might be a journalist. Put people in touch with other people who know more about it. Speak at trade associations. Invite me to speak at trade associations, maybe even with a microphone. And we need to spread the word. We can't just feel that because fire is an incredibly emotive and sensitive topic, that it shouldn't be talked about logically and respected. And in no way do I wish to undermine that fact, but we do need to move to a circular furniture world. And right now we are 100% non-circular, with no real way of getting ourselves out of that.
Thank you. And Carole?
I think we need to know how to dream of a better world as well, because when you work in sustainability, it's quite easy to be bogged down by the statistics, the numbers. It's quite pro-anxiety, and I think we need to also, design our way out of it, is also dreaming our way out of it, so that we have a clear vision of where we want to be, and design for that vision, with no compromise.
Thank you. Hopefully that's somewhat uplifting as to ways that we can see through this. So thank you to our panellists today, and thank you for listening. And please do visit Interior Design Declares to see what we're doing, and if you're a supplier, sign up. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.